Okay, we're going to do a little bit more aiming, but we're almost finished. ABCs of recruiting. So I call this a blind call. I don't do face-to-face interviews. I never talk to someone for the first time face-to-face. Why? Because it's too hard to get to my office. Really, seriously, it is. It takes too much of my time. I will call someone, have a conversation on the phone. I am not affected by whether their suit is $1,000 or whether they're in jeans. You can't impress me. You can't possibly impress me with your physical presence. I only want to know what you've done and how you think. So the first interview we have, and they don't even know it's an interview, frankly, the first interview we have is over the phone, and I only ever ask one question. And it's really simple. I say, can you roll me back to when you're getting out of college or university, if you wouldn't mind, and as much time as you want, and as much detail as you want, can you take me through your career up to today? And what they talk about is what's important to them. And if it lines up with what you're looking for, then you've got a winner. Here's the interesting thing. I'm only looking for one thing in that first call. I want to understand whether the individual, male or female, has a strong internal locus of control, so they take charge of things and do things for themselves, or if they have a strong external locus of control. Have they been a victim? You know, have they had a lot of bad luck in life? Because if they've had a lot of bad luck in life, they're going to have a lot of bad luck with you, and you don't want that. If I like what I've heard, and sometimes these are 5, 6, 10-minute calls, sometimes a lot longer. Then I'll send them the position profile we talked about, tell them to sit down, take a look at it, call me back if you're interested. Believe me, I will call them back, because it very rarely ever happens. And then I will send them the CCV, the confidential candidate brief, ask them to complete it. And then we do another interview on the phone. So I put a partner on the phone with me. You should never interview alone. You will miss stuff all the time. So 2 of us will get on the phone, and I'll ask the same question. Take me back to when you're getting out of college, university, and take me through your life. I'm looking for 2 things. Consistency. I already know they're qualified, right? I already know they're qualified because we did the research, and we sent them this stuff. So it's not like it's blind. I already know they're qualified and they have the experience. Now, what is it about them that would allow me to attract them to our organization? And they're going to reveal that in that conversation. And my partner and I will talk afterwards about what it was. So if they get through this interview, we know they're interested and they're qualified, and we have a fairly good idea what we have to do as an organization to bring them on board. Okay, hire. How many people do multiple interviews? So how many people hire someone on the first interview? No hands, good. No hands. So we do 5 interviews. It sounds like a lot. It's not. If you're going to hire an executive that's going to possibly create $24 billion worth of value for your company, or cost you $6.7 million, it's worth spending a little bit of time to get to know them. But you don't want to spend a lot of time. You want to make it as efficient as possible. So when you use the confidential candidate brief and the position profile, you screen in all the people that are qualified and you're interested in. Are you with me? And then we take the top, usually 10 people, and we do a face-to-face interview. And we always do this in pairs. I'll ask a question, or Mark will ask a question, or Anita will ask a question, and somebody else will take the notes. And we do this over and over and over again. And there's always 2 people in every single interview. In a second, it's going to be the search chair. It's always 2 people, one asking the question, one taking the answer, one reading the body language. Obviously not as well as you do, Dan, but close. And only if they impress us do they go forward. And if we like them, we'll take the 10 down to the top 7. And sometimes even lower than that. And then we'll do a search chair interview. So remember the person that we hired to help us? They did the benchmark interview. They told us what the person looked like, so we know what they look like, so it's their fault if we're wrong. I'm kidding. It's never their fault. They'll come for the next interview, and we'll work with them to go through the 5, 6, 7 candidates and bring it down to the top 3. Then they get to meet the hiring manager. Now, the hiring manager in our world is the person that's actually going to manage that individual. It might be the CEO, it might be a VP, it might be a director. And the hiring manager is a little bit different from the ultimate hiring manager, which we won't talk about, but You may hear me in conversation afterwards talking about the ultimate hiring manager, and that's the person that can say no to anybody for anything. So this is the hiring manager. So the hiring manager does their interview, and we're looking for different things. Every single stage, we're looking for different things, and we're either including people because they've got them, or we're excluding people because they haven't. And remember, they're volunteering this information because they're not looking for a job. They're not looking to impress us. They're looking to connect with a better opportunity, which is what we're offering them. So we deselect as we go through, but the hiring manager is looking for leadership style, systems thinking, creative thinking, personal mastery. So all the soft stuff that we talked about earlier this morning. And if they make it, then they go to the search committee. Now, we've reversed this on purpose. What happens in most organizations is the search committee will interview the top 2 or 3 candidates, and then they'll take them to the boss, and they'll go, well, what do you think? And then they'll wait for him to make a decision. Oh, that's what we were going to do too. That would have been our decision. So when we do the interview with the hiring manager does not tell the search committee what they're thinking. So the search committee actually has to show up, do the interview, and think for themselves. It makes people a little bit uncomfortable, but what it really does is it drives the truth. Because if the team, if the 5 or 6 people that are on that search selection committee, if the team is actually in sync, then they have to agree, and they have to tell the hiring manager why. And here's the last thing we do with all candidates, and I'll tell you why in a second. Has anybody ever hired someone and then somebody else showed up for the job? Like you thought they were a superstar? Oh, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. But we've all had those experiences. You know, you hired Susie Rocket Star, and her sister showed up and she just wasn't up to the game. This happens a lot because people don't actually test. Have any of you ever watched American Idol? Do you know what American Idol is? Show of hands. I can't see the heads because the lights are too bright. Thank you. So everybody know who Randy Brown is? Or Randy Jackson? Okay, so he's one of the judges. So on American Idol, you can't just walk up on the stage and say, oh, just put me through. I'm a great singer. And Randy go, okay, dog. Yeah, you can go through. No, they make you sing, right? They make you prove that you're good at what you do.
David, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Adrian. So what we do is we go, okay, so we think you're the person, male or female. We think you're the person. So now we want you to come and tell us what your 30, 60, 90-day plan is. We've now probably spent 12 hours together through all these interviews. You've been asking great questions. Now prove to us you know what you're going to do. And they come and they give their presentation. And it doesn't matter what they talk about. What we're interested in knowing is, in analyzing, is how they went about getting the information to make their presentation. Did they do, for example, did they do it all on their own? Or did they actually call up the VP's executive assistant or somebody else and say, hey, listen, I need the following documentation to produce my report? Those are the kinds of things we're looking for because that's the kind of style, management style, leadership style they're going to have. They may say they're an inclusive leader and they believe in teamwork, but if they don't pick up the phone and ask us for any information, we know that's not true. And they've just demonstrated that they are wrong. Now, this is important. Remember how we talked about hiring a superstar or maybe not hiring a superstar? Well, this is sort of sad. Well, it's very sad, actually. Steve Curry, NBA star. He was a Nike signed athlete. So Nike had the rights to market his shoes. Okay, are you with me? So he went to re-up with Nike. He'd been with them for 3 years, and he was almost a superstar, but not quite. So he had to re-up with Nike. So he went to the presentation with his dad. He went to the presentation. They got the guy who was giving the presentation got his name wrong. Didn't even pronounce it. And the name he used didn't even pronounce correctly. And on the slides was another athlete's name on top of that. So the meeting to re-sign this guy went downhill really quickly. And I don't know if that VP of sales was just having a bad day or if they just hired a lousy VP of sales. And we'll never know because Nike's not talking. But the interesting thing is that he went on to become the MVP. And they're not hiring him, and Under Armour hiring him led to Under Armour's valuation increasing by $14 billion. That's a big mistake. That VP that did that intro never should have happened, never should have been hired. So, last, don't hire a liar. Anyone seen this movie? It's hilarious, right? But in HR, it's terrifying. How'd this guy ever get a job? He was a doctor, I mean, he's a surgeon, he was a lawyer, he was an airplane pilot. I mean, give me a break. In the US and Canada, every year, companies lose $630 billion to internal theft and bad hires. Shouldn't happen. So when you get to the end of your journey and you're pretty much convinced you're going to hire that individual and you've done your psych assessment and you've taken you've had an emotional intelligence test administered, take all that information together and look at your candidate and say, okay, is this a clear picture of the individual that we want to hire? And that's the only way to do this. Otherwise, you may end up hiring a liar. In conclusion, you all know what it takes to build champions. We talked about Nadia Comaneci at the front end. It's exciting and invigorating for Anita and I to be here and look at where you are in the evolution of your companies, because you're right at the front end. And you're engaged. As individuals and managers, you're engaged to make this happen. So, you already know what it takes to build a champion. I invite you to continue that journey and build championship companies.